The film begins at night, as a car thief takes advantage of the quiet street and tries to open any car to steal it. However, he is shocked to find the corpse of a man brutally murdered inside a vehicle. We later learn that the victim is named George, a well-known businessman who owns an auction company. The next day, we see Dr. Sam during a psychotherapy session with one of his patients. After the session ends, he listens to his voicemail and we learn that Sam is on the verge of separating from his wife. At that moment, a beautiful young woman named Brooke enters and tells him that she knew George was receiving therapy from him, so he must be aware of their relationship. She then pulls out a watch that belonged to George and asks Sam to return it to George's wife, saying there's no need for her to know about the betrayal and end up hating her husband after his death. Sam responds that she could have just mailed it. Brooke becomes nervous and says she didn't think of that. When Sam notices her anxiety, he asks if there's anything she wants to share with him as a therapist. Before Brooke can speak, his secretary informs him that Detective Joseph is here to question him about George's murder. Brooke becomes visibly shaken and, in her nervousness, accidentally knocks over and breaks a sculpture on Sam's desk. Sam asks her to wait in the lounge until he finishes with Joseph, and she thanks him for understanding. Joseph then enters and asks Sam if George had any enemies or people threatening him. Sam replies that he doesn't know. Joseph then asks about George's personal relationships and whether he was involved with gangs, as some rumors suggest. But Sam refuses to answer, explaining that this information is confidential and part of the therapist-patient privilege. Sam notices that Brooke left the watch on the desk, and he quickly grabs it and hides it before Joseph notices. Joseph then asks when George's last visit was, and Sam replies that it was 2 days ago, apologizing and saying he can't reveal anything further. Later, Sam sits alone and pulls out George's session records. We learn that George was 55 years old. Sam recalls their first session, during which George spoke about a relationship with his secretary but refused to name her. He said he later had to hire another girl named Brooke, and from the way he talked about her, it was clear he was smitten from the first sight. He admitted to deliberately showing her his interest and even gave her exclusive previews of rare art pieces before auctions. These were the details of their first session. Sam then returns home and is surprised to find his mother, Dr. Grace, who is also a psychiatrist. She seems puzzled by his calm demeanor and tells him it's not normal that he doesn't seem affected by his impending divorce after 8 years of marriage. Sam laughs and tells her he knows how to control his emotions. He then talks to her about George's case, and she advises him to report everything he knows to the police. But Sam says he can't break the psychiatrist's code of ethics and reveal confidential information about his patients. The next day, Sam goes to the laundromat, bringing George's file with him, and begins reading. He reviews a particular session where George seemed emotionally distressed and asked, "Do you think someone who has killed once could do it again?" Sam replied, "What do you mean?" George then began telling the story of a rich girl who had committed murder but refused to give further details. George then answered his own question, saying that murder is an aggressive act that depends on the nature of the killer. If the person is naturally aggressive, they could kill 1,000 times. But if they are peaceful and were driven by circumstance, it's unlikely they would do it again. Suddenly, Sam hears movement. At first, he ignores it, but as the sounds persist, he becomes anxious and starts calling out to see if someone is there, but no one answers. He gets scared, grabs his clothes, and prepares to leave. On his way out, he notices a water pipe leaking and realizes the noise was from that. Just then, Brooke appears. When he asks why she's there, she says she was looking for him and that the secretary told her where to find him. She's brought a sculpture to replace the one she broke last time. It's clear she also has feelings for Sam. Sam tells her he returned the watch to George's widow, and she suspects nothing. Brooke thanks him and says that if anyone found out about her relationship with George, she'd be in big trouble. She adds that she never loved George. Sam tells her that if she ever wants to talk about anything that bothers her, he's always there to listen. Sam then resumes reading George's file. We learn that George began to completely ignore his former secretary and started showing more affection for Brooke. Eventually, he rented an apartment near her house to keep an eye on her. He suspected she was involved with a man named Wajid, but later discovered he was just her physiotherapist. In a later session, George brought a picture of Brooke to show Sam, praised her beauty, declared his deep love for her, and said he was obsessed and had forgotten all about the former secretary. In another session, George described a terrifying recurring nightmare. He said he finds himself walking in a forest, then entering a house where he sees a little girl holding a teddy bear. He opens a closet to retrieve a small green box, but a terrifying white hawk attacks him and snatches it away. When he looks at the girl, he sees that she is angry and has ripped out the teddy bear's eye, which bleeds. The girl starts chasing him, and he cannot escape or leave the house. The next day, Sam goes to meet Joseph, who is at George's company. There, he meets Gail, a longtime employee, who takes him to Joseph. Upon meeting him, Joseph immediately asks about George's romantic relationships, but Sam, as usual, refuses to share any information. Joseph then reveals that George's diary shows he had 5 therapy sessions a week, not 2 as Sam claimed. This suggests George was using therapy as a cover to meet someone else. Sam responds sarcastically, maybe he was meeting a man. But Joseph surprises him by revealing that the forensic report confirmed George was killed by a woman. He again urges Sam to share anything he knows about George's relationship. Sam still refuses. Joseph warns him that his life is in danger since the killer surely knows that Sam was close to George. But Sam stands firm and walks away. On his way out, he runs into Brooke, but she completely ignores him as if she doesn't know him. Sam begins to suspect she might be the killer but still refuses to say anything about her. He returns to his office and continues reading George's records. He learns that George and Brooke became romantically involved after their first encounter, and Brooke didn't object. At this moment, Brooke enters and says, "You probably think I killed George." She then shares her side of the story, how she didn't love him but enjoyed his attention, though she always felt guilty. Shockingly, she reveals that she was with George the night he died and was the last person to see him alive. She even told him that night she was going to break up with him. The next day, she learned he was dead. She tells Sam that her feelings were conflicted. She was relieved to be free of him but also saddened. Tearfully, she says it was her only sin. Sam is moved and hugs her, telling her she is not guilty and that he believes every word she said. Later, Grace visits and notices Sam is disturbed. He tells her about George's nightmare. Grace interprets the dream, saying the little girl represents a seemingly innocent woman with malicious intention. She urges Sam to go to the police, warning that he is putting his life in danger. Sam replies that he'll think about it. Sam then decides to visit Brooke's house. When he arrives, he rings the bell, but no one answers. He then spots Brooke walking quickly with a headscarf on. He follows her quietly to the Central Park. As she walks into a dark area, Sam follows, and suddenly, he is confronted by a mugger who pulls a knife on him and threatens to kill him if he doesn't hand over his belongings. Sam tries to calm him and gives him his wallet. The mugger, greedy, then asks for his jacket too, so Sam complies. The next day, we learn that the thief was killed, because the criminal, upon seeing him wearing Sam's jacket, thought he was Sam and killed him. Afterwards, Joseph arrives and tells Sam that what happened was an assassination attempt on him, and that whoever killed George definitely wants to eliminate him too. But Sam replies that it was just a coincidence, and that the thief was greedy and met a bad end due to his own misfortune. Joseph then asks him what he was doing in the garden at that late hour, and Sam answers that he was just taking a walk. He refuses to give any information about Brooke, saying he was following her, or at least he thought he was following her, since he didn't see her face, only guessed her figure and assumed it was Brooke. To be sure, he goes to Brooke's apartment and sees the doctor who was giving her a massage session. He asks her where she was the night before, and she replies that she was sick at home all day and couldn't go out. She had tried to reach him but couldn't, and apologizes for not being able to open the door due to her condition. She then invites him to attend the auction being held at the company that evening. That night, Sam goes to the company and suddenly enters Brooke's office. She looks startled, clearly not expecting him, and quickly hides a paper in her hand. Sam notices her nervousness but doesn't ask about it. She then takes him and they head to the auction hall. Along the way, Brooke drops the office key, and Sam picks it up intending to return it to her. But she goes to her place and begins her work in the auction, handling phone bids. Meanwhile, Sam keeps thinking about what Brooke was trying to hide, hesitating whether to search her office. He tells himself he shouldn't go through her things, but in the end, curiosity gets the better of him. He sneaks into the office while she is busy at the auction. She wouldn't even notice he is gone. He enters the office and finds that the paper she was hiding is a torn-up newspaper article. He tries to piece it together and discovers that it's about a girl from a wealthy family whose father was murdered under mysterious circumstances. At that moment, Brooke notices Sam's absence and realizes he must have gone to her office. She rushes over. Sam feels embarrassed and tells her he didn't mean to snoop but just wanted to know what she was hiding. When he asks about the story in the newspaper, she refuses to talk. Later, Sam runs into Joseph by chance. Joseph tells him that he has identified the girl George was involved with, and that he plans to arrest her after the auction. Sam feels anxious and worried for Brooke. He tries to warn her and signals to her, but she doesn't see him, so he thinks of writing her a message. To avoid suspicion from the police or Joseph, he buys an item at the auction and writes a warning message on the back of the check he uses for payment. When Brooke receives the check, she reads the message and quickly escapes. Finally, Sam feels relieved that Joseph won't be able to catch her. He then meets with Gail and asks for Brooke's address. Gail tells him that if Brooke's not at her apartment, she's probably at her family's home, and she gives him the address. He drives there quickly, and as soon as he enters, he finds Brooke sitting and waiting for him. Elsewhere, we see Joseph sitting in front of Gail's house, waiting for her. When she arrives, he tells her he wants to talk about George. She agrees and invites him in for a drink. Back with Sam and Brooke, Brooke starts telling the story behind the newspaper article. She tells him that the man in the photo is her father. She explains that her parents had divorced long ago, and her mother never cared for her because she was an alcoholic. Brooke lived in that house alone, despite her mother being there. When her mother died, she went to live with her father, and those were the happiest days of her life. When she turned 18, she received her mother's will, which was a letter asking her to protect her inheritance and not give any of it to her father, calling him greedy. But Brooke didn't believe the letter and went to talk to her father. There, she saw the greed in his eyes and realized he had been using her all along, motivated by her wealth. Not only that, he even tried to kill her, but she pushed him, and he fell from the balcony and died. Naturally, Sam is shocked by the story and asks her if George knew. She says she never told him, but he figured it out. Sam hugs her and tells her he believes her. Then he remembers that the description of the house in George's nightmare matches Brooke's house. He asks her to show him the house and tells her about the nightmare. He asks her about a specific room and a small green box. She takes him to the room, but she doesn't know anything about the box. He asks her why she broke up with George. She tells him she discovered that George had a relationship with Gail before her, and she remembers that Gail always liked receiving her salary in a green box. That's when Sam suspects that Gail had been threatening George, telling him to break up with Brooke or she'd kill him. These threats likely settled into his subconscious and became nightmares. Sam then realizes that Gail is the killer and tells Brooke they need to leave immediately to inform the police. Meanwhile, we see Gail killing Joseph in the same way George was killed, because he discovered her relationship with George. Back to Sam and Brooke, who are getting ready to leave, but Brooke realizes she forgot her keys and goes back inside to get them. At that moment, Gail surprises Sam and tells him he escaped her in the garden, and that the thief died in his place. But this time, she won't let him go. She stabs him in the back. Then she goes in to finish off Brooke, blaming her for stealing George from her. Brooke runs, and they end up on the balcony. There, Gail tells Brooke to jump or she'll kill her. At that moment, Sam enters, and Gail is shocked, thinking he was dead. She loses her balance and falls to her death. In the end, Sam hugs Brooke and tells her they've finally gotten rid of that nightmare forever. And that's how the movie ends. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video so you won't miss any future uploads.